Imagine a plantation cellar in 1864. Iron door ripped open by Union bayonets, and 19 children staring back in the lantern light. Same high cheekbones, same pale green eyes that almost glow, same auburn hair with threads of gold running through it, like they were all cast from the same mold. The oldest, a girl no more than 14, looks straight at the soldiers and says, calm as death, "Mama says we are her blood forever. If we leave, the family dies with us." Those weren't stolen kids. They weren't accidents. They were designed, engineered over 17 freezing Georgia winters, by one woman who decided the only way to keep her plantation alive was to make the enslaved part of her own body. What she did to build that legacy will turn your stomach. And we're only at the beginning. If you've got the nerve for the darkest corners of American history, the ones they burned the records to hide, hit subscribe now. Drop your city or state in the comments. Let's see who's close to this nightmare. And stay locked in, because it gets worse. Eastern Georgia, winter 1848. The kind of cold that makes red clay crack like old skin. Bellamy Plantation sat 9 muddy miles outside Milford, 1,400 acres of played-out dirt that hadn't grown decent cotton in years. Debts were higher than the live oaks. When Elias Bellamy finally drowned in his own lungs at the end of January, his widow Evelyn March Bellamy stood graveside in black wool, so heavy it looked like armor. 29 years old, face blank, eyes calculating. She wasn't raised for this life. Savannah merchant daughter, tutors, silk dresses, French verbs, the whole performance of old money adjacency. Married Elias at 20 because he had land and a heartbeat. No children between them. He did have Lucas though, 15, sullen, book-obsessed, and already convinced she murdered his mother by existing. The plantation was a corpse waiting for burial. 28 enslaved people left after Elias sold off the rest to cover poker debts and losing seasons. The big house, 1812, federal style, still had its tall windows and proud columns, but rain came through the roof in 3 rooms and paint flaked like dead skin. The quarters sagged. Overseer's whip hadn't cracked in months because there wasn't enough work to justify it. Creditors from Milford sent letters that stopped pretending to be polite. Evelyn's lawyer didn't waste words. Sell it all. Land, people. Pay what you owe. Move back to your father's house in Savannah and live quiet, or lose everything to auction. She picked option C. One February night, candles spitting, wind rattling the shutters, she sat with the ledgers open. Names, ages, values. Buying replacements was impossible. The overseas trade had been dead 40 years. Home market prices were criminal. Waiting for births to mature into field hands took 15 years minimum. Too slow. Too uncertain. Then the idea landed like a blade between her ribs. She could supply the stock herself. If the children carried her blood, selling them would mean carving up her own line. They'd be chained to Bellamy, not just by law, but by nature. Loyalty wouldn't be beaten in, it would grow in the womb. She was 29, strong, still fertile. Select the best men from the quarters. Conceive deliberately. Raise the offspring with small comforts, better food, a corner in the big house, secret lessons, so they'd feel the place was theirs. Then, when they were old enough, pair them carefully. Expand the line. In 20 years, she could have 60, 70 souls who could never run far, because running would mean abandoning their own blood. She pulled a fresh journal from the drawer, began her propagation notes in the substitution cipher she'd learned as a girl trading letters with cousins. Grafting equal to conception, prime stock equal to the men, sprouts equal to the children. First line, March 5th, 1848. Grafting begun. Prime stock Jasper, 26 years. Broad back, steady pulse, clear night. Jasper came to the house after lamps were doused in the quarters. No need for chains or threats. Refusal meant a coffle headed to the Mississippi bottoms. She kept it clinical, silent. Called him back 4 more times before April. By the dogwoods blooming. She knew she carried. Lucas saw it first. Stepmother stopped riding fence lines at dawn. Took supper in her room. Sent the house girl away. Said she wanted solitude. For a woman who once cared about every curtain pleat. The retreat screamed wrong. Then early June, he caught the parlor conversation with Widow Hale, the midwife who birthed white babies and black ones alike. Timing certain? Hale asked. Late November, early December at latest, and Elias He was already down bad in January. Long silence. Lucas pressed his back to the hallway wall, barely breathing. "We shared a bed shortly before the fever took him completely," Evelyn said, voice flat as pond ice. Lucas tasted bile. His father had been coughing blood since before New Year's. Delirious. Unconscious half the time. No chance in January. The child was made after Elias was in the ground. Scandal would bury them. Widow pregnant that fast. Swearing it was her dead husband's. Creditors would swarm. Savannah family would disown her. But the lie itself, the cold plan to claim it as legitimate Bellamy blood, felt like something unholy. He weighed telling someone. The Milford lawyer? Grandfather? But he was 15. Minor. Evelyn controlled the post. The house. The story. So he watched. Saw Jasper summoned again. Always after moonset. Always when the overseer was drunk in town. Noticed Evelyn spoke to Jasper in full sentences. Not kind. Measured. Like appraising livestock. By August. He was sure. And then he found the journal. Lucas never got the chance to confront her about the journal. He'd cracked the cipher over 3 sleepless nights. Simple letter swaps, nothing fancy, but enough to turn his stomach inside out. The pages weren't love letters or guilty confessions. They were blueprints. Charts mapping physical traits, height, shoulder width, jaw strength, even eye color. Projections scrawled in the margins. Year 5, 4 to 6 sprouts. Year 10, 18 to 22. Year 20, 70 plus self-sustaining line. Notes on temperament. Docile preferred for housework, resilient for fields. It read like a horse breeder's logbook. Except every specimen had a name. Every name belonged to a living man on the plantation, and Lucas's own stepmother had underlined one line 3 times in red ink. First sprout due December 1848. Claim premature if questioned. Secure legacy begins. He copied 4 pages in shaking handwriting, hid them under a loose floorboard in his room, then burned the originals he'd taken, or tried to. The next morning, Evelyn found ash on the hearth, and a singed corner he'd missed. She didn't accuse him outright. She just looked at him across the breakfast table with those steady green eyes and said, very quietly, "Some things are better left locked away, Lucas, for everyone's sake." That was the day the sickness started. At first he thought it was nerves, headaches, no appetite, a constant metallic taste in his mouth. Evelyn fussed like the perfect grieving stepmother. Brought him broth herself. Insisted Widow Hale examine him twice a week. Nervous exhaustion, the midwife declared. Possibly early consumption, common in boys his age, sensitive disposition. She prescribed rest, fresh air when he could stand it, and a tonic from the apothecary in Milford. Evelyn mixed it herself every evening. Spooned it into his mouth when his hands shook too much to hold the glass. By October, he could barely get out of bed. Muscles felt like wet rope. Stomach burned after every swallow. He recognized the signs from an old medical volume in the library. Slow arsenic poisoning. The tonic had a faint bitter edge he'd started noticing too late. He tried one last move. Scribbled a letter to his grandfather in Savannah, the journal, the plan, the poison, Jasper's name, everything. Sealed it. Gave it to Bess, the 12-year-old kitchen girl who sometimes slipped him extra cornbread when Evelyn wasn't looking. "Posted in Milford," he whispered. "Don't let her see." Bess took the letter, and then she gave it to Evelyn. That night, Evelyn carried the ashes to his bedside in a small tin, showed him the blackened edges. "Fever dreams, darling," she said, almost tenderly. "Your mind is playing tricks. Rest now. Soon you'll sleep easy." Lucas Bellamy died on December 9, 1848, 11 days before his 16th birthday. The Milford doctor listed cause as consumption, rapid decline. Evelyn wept at the graveside. Black veil fluttering in the wind. She wore mourning for a full year. 5 days after the funeral, she gave birth to a boy in the upstairs bedroom. Widow Hale attended alone. No visitors. No announcements beyond a quiet note to the county clerk. Evelyn named him Elias Jr. and told the few neighbors who asked that he'd come early, premature by several weeks. No one counted the months backward too closely. Not out loud, anyway. The plantation began to change after that. Cotton rows straightened. Yields crept up. The enslaved population grew, not through purchases, but births. Evelyn became known in Milford as the sharp-eyed widow who turned the place around. Reclusive, efficient, rarely entertained guests. When she did appear at church or the occasional market day, she carried herself with quiet dignity, a woman who'd suffered loss and risen above it. No one saw what was happening behind the columns. By 1852, she'd borne two more, a daughter, Clara, in 1849, and another, Beatrice, in 1851. Different fathers each time, carefully chosen from the quarters for health, strength, clear eyes. Widow Hale delivered them all, pocketed extra coin, and kept her mouth shut. She also handled the darker work. When a woman in the quarters conceived outside Evelyn's approved pairings, Hale arrived with bundles of herbs, forced the loss in a back room behind the smokehouse. The women bled, wept in silence, buried small griefs no one could name. One refused. Mara, 23, 5 months along with a man Evelyn hadn't selected. Evelyn ordered the termination. Mara ran at dusk, made it 3 miles into the pine thicket before the dogs found her, dragged back, held down by 2 men while Hale did what she was paid to do. Mara survived the bleeding, but never spoke again, died in a fever 2 years later. 26. Evelyn's own children lived in the big house. Soft beds, better food, secret lessons in letters and numbers, illegal under Georgia law. But who would ever step inside to check? She called them orphans taken in from Christian charity. They believed her. For now, she kept measuring them, noting growth spurts, temperament, health in the coded pages, planning the next graphs years ahead. And in the east wing, behind a door no one but she used, she began building what she privately called the lineage chamber. By 1863, the war was bleeding Georgia dry. Overseer Harlan was dead at Shiloh. Old Silas couldn't hold the whip like before. Whispers of Lincoln, emancipation, and Yankee boots reached the quarters through songs and stolen glances. Evelyn felt the ground shifting. She locked gates tighter, doubled rations to buy quiet, and pushed her legacy faster. Elias Jr. turned 15. She paired him with Naomi in a mock ceremony she ran herself. No Bible, no joy. Naomi stared at the floor. Elias nodded like it was just another chore. Clara cracked first. 13. Too smart. Too curious. She found a loose journal page while sorting papers. Decoded it in secret over weeks. Read her own birth. Grafting 1849. Stock Caleb. Harvest November. Saw the trees. Her name linked to boys not even born yet. Planned matings stretching decades. She confronted Evelyn in the lineage chamber that night. Lamps low, vials glinting like eyes. You're my mother, Caleb's my father. You're breeding us like livestock. Evelyn shut the door. You're safe here. Refuse, I sell you south. Worse places exist, Clara told Elias. He resisted at first. She gave us the house, not the fields. But Beatrice and Lydia understood instantly. The house children knew now. The air turned thick with silent hate. Evelyn sensed it. To remind them who ruled, she whipped a runaway girl, Grace, in the yard at dawn. 20 lashes, made every house child watch, meant to terrify. Instead, it showed fear in Evelyn's shaking hands. Whispers exploded in the quarters. She's scared. Yankees coming. Clara slipped out at night, met older women in the pines. Hope looked at her hard. Your mama built hate, not family. What if we don't wait? Clara asked. Footsteps. They scattered, but the idea burned. March 17, 1864. Confederate scouts passed. Talking defeat. Sherman closing in. Evelyn gathered her 12 children in the chamber. Showed the laudanum bottles. If they free the others, you'll be outcasts, neither white nor black. Better we stay together. Forever. Clara stepped forward. No. Elias blocked the box. We read everything. The graftings, the fathers. You're a monster. Evelyn slapped him, grabbed journals, vials, charts, ran toward the quarters clutching her proof. Chaos. People poured out. Blows landed. Evelyn fell. Papers scattered in mud. Vials smashed. Pages burned. Smoke rose. Clara and Elias arrived too late. Flames high. Hope faced them. She's gone. Justice done. Let it rest, Clara whispered. Next morning, Evelyn was missing. Sheriff blamed war panic. No one spoke. War ended 1865. Freedom came slow. Most left. Clara went to Savannah, seamstress. Married. No kids. Died 1901. Silent about Bellamy. Elias tried the land. Failed. Vanished to Texas. Died 1892 with a notebook repeating, "I did not choose this." The house burned 1872. Land sold 1879. 1874, cistern on Old Bellamy ground gave up a woman's skeleton, skull bashed. Locket with boy portraits. Buried unmarked. Black families in Milford knew, passed the truth in whispers. Mistress killed by her own. Body hidden, just as quiet. Today, overgrown fields. No marker. Story lives in oral memory. Genealogy shadows. Footnotes on slavery's darkest edges. Evelyn wanted eternity. She got erasure. Her victims outlasted her. Chose silence to protect each other. That's power. What chills you most? The plan? Or how it ended? Drop it below. Share if it hit hard. Subscribe for more buried nightmares. Some graves stay quiet for good reason.